Chapter 17. Death and Election. Scene 1. Ethan's plans. It was past midnight. There was no knock on the door. Elijah felt a shake of his shoulder. He drowsily turned his head. "Dad, chill. Be quiet. Put something on and come to my office, and don't wake anyone." "What's going on?" "Just be quiet and come to my office." "Okay," he whispered. Ethan went to the door, checked right, checked left, and in his stocking feet, hurried down the stairs and into his office, leaving the door open. A few minutes later, Elijah, heavy-eyed, walked into the office. Ethan was sitting behind his desk with another chair next to him. In a loud whisper, he said, "Close the door quietly and come sit next to me." A sleepy but curious Elijah plodded to the chair and settled in, his head not quite clear of a slumber fog. "What's going on, Dad? Why so much stealth?" "Because no one can know what I'm going to tell you, and I mean no one." Testily, Elijah answered, "Okay, I get it, no one." "I'm serious, Elijah." Seriously, Elijah said, "I understand." As you probably noticed at the graduation and dedication ceremony, President of the Council, Lloyd Bertrand, coughed a lot. Yeah, he sounded awful too, a very deep, raspy voice. Well, he has cancer, and he may not have long to live. Only 3 people know, and he wants to keep it that way. It's a tough time for him. He lost his wife about a year ago from cancer, and that was a big surprise to everyone. She had the same raspy voice, but since she was very shy, no one noticed a little cough every once in a while. But his is pronounced and is getting worse. As much as he can, he does not go out in public. He's been assigning most of his speaking engagements to me. Has he done anything about the cancer? No. He says it's God's will, and the Lord is calling him home to be with his wife. He'll be happy then. Knowing she's waiting for him makes it easier. The Lord is kind. They'll be reunited in heaven. So, he won't have to live without her very long. They were blessed. They were. That means the presidency of the council will be vacant and will need to be filled. Elijah looked into his eyes, smiled, and said, "And you're going to fill it, if I can get enough votes." The process for selecting the president was not complex. Each of the 12 churches' bank of votes was based on the size of the church's congregation. The council member of the church controls the votes. The council member who got over 50% of the members of all the churches became president of the Council of Evangelical Christian Churches for life, or until he resigned. No one church controlled more than 50%. Ethan's church controlled more than any other, 37%. Therefore, whoever could form alliances to get over the 50% mark and agree on their leader would win. I'm sure you'll find council members to back you. I think I can, but it might take some maneuvering and some sacrifices from the family. I'm sure we'll be behind you. We'll do what needs to be done. We don't know if he'll live a few months or a year or even 2 years. So, no one can know, not even the family. It would look bad if it appeared as if we were planning a power grab, especially if he's not yet dead. We'd be seen as vultures circling over him, and that could cost us the election. We need alliances if we were to get over the threshold. So, what do you want me to do? Join me in running our church. But whatever you have planned, drop it. Dad, there are things I want to do. You can run the finances of the church, and when I'm president of the council, you can take my place on the council. You won't get a better position anywhere. This would be a really good head start to your career if you wanted to be in the hierarchy of the church. It's a great stepping stone. So, in a year or 2 at the most, I could be a member of the council. Exactly. Okay, I'm in. So what do I need to do? We need to gather information on all the counselors and find out which ones can be persuaded to support me. We need to find out what they want and find a way to get it to them in return for their support. But it has to be subtle, very subtle. I made an opening at the head of the church business department for you. I can start collecting financial information. Whatever you discover, we will not extort, threaten, or bribe, but there will be things that are valuable to them that will enhance their position in the church. So, just keep your eyes open and your ear to the ground. You forgot, nose to the grindstone. Funny, but I'm serious. I know you are, Dad. Now, back to bed with you. We'll talk again later. Elijah went to his bedroom, snuggled back into bed, and smiled himself to sleep. Scene 2. Here and gone. That evening when dinner ended and Bible study began, Elijah shows more interest than usual. Delilah quietly groused at the beginning and sighed at the conclusion. Naomi was attentive, and Bethany was just there, evincing no emotional interest, as if she were analyzing them from a distance. After Esther closed with the family holding hands in a circle of prayer and a God bless you, Ethan said, "Bethany, Naomi, your mother, and I would like to talk to you in my office. Go in and sit on the couch. We'll be there shortly." The couch was part of a sitting area with several chairs set aside for solemn private conversations, mostly for the church's business. Evincing little concern, Elijah and Delilah left. Quizzical expressions rolled over Bethany's and Naomi's face as they looked at each other. "What's this about?" Naomi asked. "You'll find out. Just go in," her mother said. With one last shared puzzled look, they headed to his office. Entering the office, Naomi asked Bethany, "What do you think this is about?" "I have no idea." Actually, Bethany thought her father had told their mother about Naomi's mother, and they were going to inform Naomi. Bethany was nearing panic. Their parents entered the room, and Ethan closed the door. They sat in the chairs across from the couch. Their parents wore serious, apprehensive expressions. Their father started, "Next year you are both going to college, and we know you are excited." Bethany breathed a quiet sigh of relief. "You've applied to several colleges, and your mother says that all of them have accepted you. Now, you need to make a decision. Your mother wants to leave that to you. I, on the other hand, want a more direct approach because I am concerned about your dependence on each other. You have been fused together for almost your entire life. The only difference I have noticed is Bethany's love of nature and hiking. Other than that, you two have been in lockstep every day. You spend at least a part of every day together. That's because they live in the same house and love each other, Ethan. I know they do, and I'm glad for that, but they also need to be self-sufficient, independent." Distress showed on Naomi. Bethany remained placid. Ethan paused, gathered a breath, and announced, "You will go to different colleges next year." Naomi sprung up. "What? We think it would be best to go to different colleges. Become more independent." "No," Naomi forcefully said. Bethany was her security blanket, and while she and Bethany were not as close as they had been, Naomi knew that Bethany was always there for her. It was comforting to know, just a short ways away, was a person in whom she could confide. Naomi turned to Bethany, who had remained silent. "Bethany?" Naomi pleaded. "Bethany." Bethany reached her hand out and took hold of Naomi's. Naomi shook it away. "Don't you care?" Naomi cried. "Yes, I care. I love you with all my heart. Then why are you okay with this? You're my sister, my best friend. We talked about going to different colleges before, and you seemed okay with it. That was just talk." Esther, upset, leaned toward Ethan and quietly said, "Oh my God, what have we done? They'll get over it." Esther glared at him. This family will never be the same. The true affection and support between the two girls had always been the bright spot in the family. All else could fall apart, but the two sisters were solid as a rock. She was watching the strength, the glue dissolving. Naomi took a step toward the door. Ethan stood and put his arm up, blocking her. "Sit down." Esther, with tears waiting in the corner of her eyes, said, "You'll still be able to see each other." "No, we won't." Naomi barked. "Watch your attitude." "Naomi," her father sternly demanded. Naomi sat, tearfully angry. She moved away from Bethany. Bethany had joined her mother crying. "You can write to each other and share your experiences," their mother tearfully added. "I'm not going to write her," Naomi announced. "Not ever." Bethany, crying, responded, "I'm sorry. I do love you so very much. I really do." "No, you don't. If you did, you would want us to be together." "That's enough, Naomi. You're acting like a 2-year-old. Straighten out or you won't be going to college. You can always be put to work cleaning the church." "Ethan, well, her attitude is awful. Let's all calm down. I know this is a big shock. We all need time to think about this, to adjust to it. You girls go up to your rooms." Ethan had accomplished what he needed, but seeing the friendship of his daughters end in pain hurt. He rationalized. It didn't mean that it would not be mended in time. Naomi shot up and stomped out. Bethany slowly rose and cried all the way up to her room and then into her room. Then, Sitting on the edge of her bed, she put her head in her hands and sobbed so loudly that she had to smother her cries in her pillow. Scene 3. Off to college. Delilah and Elijah's reaction to the separation of the sisters was simple. It was a good idea, and it was long overdue. They weren't euphoric about the emotional twins being separated, but they were relieved that pronouncements of the parental pride in the friends might decrease or even cease. They might no longer be asked about what those sweet girls had done, which was often followed by gushing praise. No one had ever gushed about the genuine feelings of kindness that came from Elijah and Delilah. The thought that Bethany and Naomi would now become just another pair of squabbling siblings fostered a pleasant feeling. Although Bethany tried for several weeks to engage frequently in conversations, Naomi simply turned away. As much as Naomi could, she avoided Bethany. However, at dinner, it was impossible. Their mother and father required them to be civil, but when Mom and Dad were absent, the sisters' hard silence was present. As they walked around the house, it was like watching two positively charged magnets react when one was in the vicinity of the other. Naomi proved that she could hold on to a grudge, regardless of how much she suffered. Bethany realized that she could endure a great deal of distress if she had someone to talk to, and she did. Wendy. So Bethany's summer was spent with Wendy, trying to come to grips with the loss of her only best friend. Opening up to Wendy helped, but it was still just an echo. Naomi's summer was spent painfully maintaining her anger, which had to be reinforced regularly. Former pleasures were destroyed, and that depleted most of her goodwill. In time, it was unnecessary to reinforce it. It became self-perpetuating. She didn't realize that rejection and betrayal could be a nearly bottomless force, and once it had been set free, it resists being put back even with enormous will. As much as she missed her dear friend, she hid from the feeling. While years ago their parents had planned on sitting down with Bethany and Naomi together to determine the college they would attend, after the cataclysmic college discussion, they decided to talk to them separately several days apart and without informing the other. While Bethany and Naomi knew where the other was going to college, neither would break the ice and ask, nor would they let their parents believe there was a thaw. They would hold on to the loss and the pain. The distance had grown too great, but it served to ease the pain, replacing it with hurt for one and anger for the other. And so, the summer trudged toward the start of college. On the day that Naomi departed, Bethany walked out with the family to bless and hug Naomi. When Bethany moved to hug Naomi, she quickly entered the car, closed the door, and told the driver to go. Neither the disappointment on her parents' faces nor their pleads through the closing window moved Naomi's bitterness and enmity. At all evangelical Christian colleges, phone calls are restricted and monitored to encourage participation in the college religious community and break emotional dependency on former friends, especially of the opposite sex. Bethany and Naomi's parents knew that the relationship would remain unmended. So did Bethany. Bethany swallowed her sorrow, waiting until she was in her room with the door shut. Then she cried. She pulled her tears back at a knock on her door. When she opened the door, her mother threw her arms around her and held on. As Elijah walked by, he said, "Get a room." There was no humor in his voice. Esther turned just enough for him to see her glare. He hesitated slightly and moved on, surprised. He was often unaware he had stepped over a line and then surprised by an adverse reaction. Her mother held her tighter. "She'll get over it. It just takes time," she whispered as she made small circles on her back with the palm of her hand. Bethany didn't respond. She couldn't bring herself to believe it. She quietly cried on her mother's shoulder. At the height of her tears, she decided she would have to protect herself from further anguish. That day, she began to force her sister and friend to drift from her mind, leaving only a fading shadow of their once indestructible bond. A day later, Bethany departed. The family accorded her the same send-off. She hugged them all, said she would miss them, and managed a "God bless you" in response to theirs. "When you hear from Naomi, tell her I love her." Esther said, "I will, sweetheart." And she did, but to no avail. As the car drove away, she waved. Her thoughts turned to Naomi. Breaking their bond had to begin. At the end of the driveway, she muttered, "I'll miss you, Wendy." To no one else could Bethany now trust with her thoughts. But she had only been able to commune with Wendy when she was at the gravesite. Maybe I can bridge the distance, she whispered. She knew it was a fanciful wish, but that's all she had left. Scene 4. Lloyd Bertrand dies. Pastor Habsburg's solemn evening service had its usual fire, brimstone, and, as usual, a wrath of God underlying theme, but its main topic was the heavenly inspired January 6 demonstration, which became a catalyst for later uprisings and, ultimately, the Christian Revolution. Tonight, a Tuesday, was the celebration of that day. After the closing prayer and the God bless you holding hands ceremony, the crowd flooded out of the Eternal Blessings Church of God edifice. People jockeyed for positions in front of the church to see the fireworks accompanying the yearly January 6 celebration. With an 18-inch tall gold cross raised above his head, Ethan walked to the edge of the crowd. A path opened for Lloyd Bertrand, president of the Council of Evangelical Christian Churches. He walked into the crowd, followed by Ethan, who raised his hand for silence. At the center of the crowd, Bertrand stopped. The crowd silenced each other and drew attention to President Bertrand. He waited for silence and shouted, "Praise the Lord," and collapsed to his knees with his hands held high. He leaned forward until his head touched the pavement. The crowd followed. "Praise the Lord" swept through the crowd. For many, tears followed. Bertrand rose, reached his hands out, moving them back and forth above the crowd's heads. "Thank you, Lord, for blessing us and protecting us." The crowd rose. With the cool night air carrying his voice, he began. 107 years ago, American Christians stood tall and resisted secular suppression. We finally fought back against the persecution which we had endured for generations. No longer would we apologize for our belief in the Lord and the need to make this nation a Christian country once again. Christians founded this nation. They fought to establish a country where Christians could worship the Lord freely. Too long we had let the infiltration of non-Christian cultures weaken and pollute the soul of this nation. Little by little, those people had chipped away at our rights. God birthed this nation and blessed the men who brought it to life. They were all Christians, and they meant for this nation to be a Christian nation, but sinful people came into power and altered it. They made it in their image, not God's. But on January 6, 2021, we fought back against the corruption. We failed that day to put God's chosen representative back into the presidency. But it was the beginning of decades-long battles to establish a righteous Christian nation. He paused again. We are here to celebrate that beginning and thank the L. Bertrand suddenly stopped. He looked up into the dark night, stiffened, and fell backwards. His head struck the concrete, sending a torrent of blood flowing out. Ethan immediately rushed to him and knelt next to him, setting the cross next to Bertrand's head. Bertrand was staring straight into the darkness, his lips parted slightly, and the tip of his tongue between them, as if his life had left at the L of Lord. Pastor Habsburg joined Ethan, kneeling next to Bertrand. "I'm a doctor. Let me through," came a shout from deep in the crowd. "I've got it." A man closer to Bertrand yelled back to the other man. Ethan and Habsburg stood and backed away. The doctor checked Bertrand while the other doctor continued to hurry through the crowd. By the time the second doctor arrived, the first doctor was standing. "It's too late. There's not even a flicker of life." "Are you sure?" "Yes. The Lord has taken him home." Tears and prayers encircled Bertrand's body. Many people were kneeling, some with their hands stretched toward the heavens, others with their hands clenched in prayer. Ethan turned toward the densest section of the crowd and raised the cross. Please, let us all kneel, and Pastor Habsburg will lead us in a prayer." Habsburg was stunned by the death. Unlike him, had little to say. "He's with you now, Lord, watching over us, leading us through his legacy, his past deeds." Habsburg could not manage an amen before he choked with tears. Ethan wedged between the doctors and in front of Habsburg. Kneeling next to the Bertrand's body, Ethan raised the cross, lowered his head, and said, "Our leader has been taken into the arms of the Lord, but we must trust in God's plan, for in Isaiah 57 verses 1 to 2 the Bible tells us, 'The righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. He entereth into peace. They rest in their beds, each one that walketh in his uprightness. Death is a part of God's great plan. President Bertrand has lived a righteous life. His earthly suffering is over. He is now in eternal peace. President Bertrand was to have signaled for the fireworks to start. Let us rejoice and announce to the world his entrance into the arms of our Heavenly Father. Let us feel his spirit walk through the gates of heaven to be home where he belongs. Ethan took a remote from Bertrand's hand and stood. With the remote hidden behind the cross, he raised the cross. The crowd stood and turned. Ethan pressed the button. As if the raising the cross was the ignition, the fireworks filled the sky. With the final crescendo, people blessed each other. President Bertrand was carried into the church on the shoulders of 4 men and placed on the altar. For the remainder of the evening and into the morning, the congregation filed past the altar, Ethan blessing them, shaking their hands. Elijah stood quietly in the background, sensing a change in his future. When the final person had left, Ethan shook and rubbed his hand and wrist. The coroner, who had been patiently waiting to the side, took Bertrand. Ethan took the cross into the back room and placed it back on its stand. When he turned to leave, Elijah was standing a few feet away. "How did you know the passage from Isaiah?" Smirking, Ethan said, "As I've said many times, always anticipate." With a complimentary smirk, Elijah replied, "I shall remember that." "Elijah, an hour after everyone has gone to bed, come to my office. Make sure no one knows, okay?" "Got it." Scene 5. Planning for the election. The soft knock on the door slowly pried open Elijah's left eye, the right side of his head being buried in his pillow. "Crap, Dad." His office. It was a mild profanity directed at himself, but still one to which his mother objected, and one he had come casually to use in college. After the January 6th death, Elijah had decided to rest for just a little while. He got ready for bed and laid down with his robe on, his slippers on, and the light on, thinking that would be enough to keep him awake. It hadn't worked. He flung himself out of bed, stumbling, nearly toppling over. He rushed to the door. Opening it, he found his father's scowl waiting. Cringing, he apologetically said, "Sorry, Dad." Curtly, his father replied, "Let's go." "Dad, I really—" "Shut it. It's over." Father and son tiptoed down the stairs and into the office. Ethan sat Elijah next to him, the long expanse of the desk displaying several files and a half-eaten sandwich with edges of the bread dried. "So what's the plan?" Elijah whimsically said, quickly skipping past his failure to be in his father's office on time. "I hope you're not taking this lightly. This is serious business. It will be part of this family's legacy and your future. It will be a chance to put our stamp on the evangelical Christian movement. It will be our chance to grow the movement, to expand to other areas and solidify our Christian nation. It's a chance to be remembered. I understand. I really do. I'm ready. Whatever you want me to do, I'm ready." "Good. If I am to be the president of the council, we're going to need an ally. We have the largest congregation by far, but not enough votes to get over the 50% threshold. If someone else can make a coalition to get over the threshold, then we are not going to make it. That means that you will not be taking my place on the council." Ethan saw Elijah's disappointment. "But if we play this right, I'm almost certain you'll take my seat." Elijah nodded. "Here's the thing. We have to do this delicately. We can't seem anxious. That's one of the reasons no one can know about our plan. We carefully have to recruit 1, maybe 2 council members with congregations large enough to give us enough votes to get us over the top. So who are the 2 largest? After us, Amos Mathai's congregation is large, and he has enough votes to get us the election without anyone else, but he's also our nearest competitor if he decides to try for the presidency. Will he? See, that's the issue. I don't know, and we can't ask because people will figure out that we're after the position. We need to find a way to get Ezekiel, his son, in our camp, and still not seem to covet the position. So, what do we know about Amos Mathai that could persuade him? What could we give him to turn him toward us and discourage him from going for the presidency? You know his son Ezekiel, right? Yeah, I know one thing about him. He's crazy about Bethany. Every gathering of the churches, he's hovering around Bethany. How does she react to him? She is polite, but has no interest in him. She doesn't want to interact with him. I've heard her and Naomi talking about him. Bethany doesn't like him. She thinks he's unsophisticated, dull, and not very bright. But she doesn't snub him or embarrass him in public. That's good, but she doesn't do that with anyone. That's why guys think they have a shot with her. Well, they're missing the target because she's never been interested in any of them. Sometimes I wonder about her. Is she looking for a knight in shining armor or what? So, do you think a marriage to Bethany might influence Mathai to back us? I know he'll do just about anything, maybe anything, to have Bethany as Ezekiel's wife. But Bethany wouldn't want it. She's not going to have a choice. She'll do what's best for the family, or she'll never be married. If we tell her it's for the benefit of the church, like it's some kind of sacred sacrifice, as if the Lord has decreed it from the voice of God, she might do it willingly. Who is going to convince her? Mom? Pastor Hapsburg? You? Or maybe a voice while she's sleeping? Get Naomi to convince her. She's been very pliable lately. Bethany might actually listen to her. They've been close forever, but not so much recently. Your mother says Naomi won't even write back to Bethany. Girls are idiotic, way too sensitive, too moody. That's why the Bible puts men in charge. Women are way too emotional. Menstruation turns them into maniacs. True, but let's not get distracted. Our issue is the election. We need a buffer in case something goes awry, because if the pairing between Bethany and Ezekiel fails to materialize, we won't have enough votes. The next largest congregation is Josiah Eudes. Getting his votes gives us another possibility, but we'll be just sure the votes needed, so it will require another congregation to win. Eudes? Isaac Eudes' father. If Josiah is like his son, Isaac, don't trust him. Why? Just don't. So, this is a personal thing, right? Well, get over it. This is more important. Understood, just beware. I always am. Besides, this could work well in two ways. We can form an alliance with Eudes and finally get a husband for Delilah. What attempt will this be? Number 4. Number 5. So far, she's had no proposals, and the longest relationship, if you can call it that, has been 2 months. And they're the ones who end it. She can be very caustic, belligerent, and I think we all know, and her reputation is spreading. We got to find someone soon. So, you're saying match Isaac with Delilah? Yes. Perfect, Elijah thought. Suddenly, having Isaac in the family appealed to Elijah. He thought their combative attitudes were well suited for each other. They could drive each other crazy every day. It would make for good family holiday entertainment. At last, Elijah would be causing Isaac pain, or at least his Delilah would. I'll invite the Eudes family to dinner. He's been hinting at it for a year. We'll put Delilah and Isaac next to each other and encourage them, push them along. Then I'll approach Josiah with a proposition of linking the families through marriage. What makes you think he'll go for it? Several times he has mentioned my lovely daughters, and within a minute or so, his wife has talked about Isaac finally settling down. Yeah, but what makes you think Isaac will agree? I'm not worried about that. He'll do what his father says. He's always ruled him with an iron hand. If you're going to push those two together, you're going to have to push hard. And you'll need to have Mom give Delilah some lessons on proper comportment. And tell Delilah that this is her last chance. If she drives this one away, you'll stop matchmaking. Good idea. So when do we start? We need an appropriate amount of time for mourning. Otherwise, as I said, we'll be seen as ghouls waiting at the graveyard. However, a new president has to be in place in 4 weeks at the most. So I figure a week of mourning should be sufficient. For the time being, according to our charter, I will be acting as president pro tem. That should help. Maybe. Anyway, we can start on the dinner after a week of mourning, and that means a hectic 2 to 4 weeks will follow, and we need to be ready and smart about everything we do. This is going to be fun. There it is, your flippant attitude. It's been there since high school, and it distresses me. This is not fun. It's serious business, and I don't know if I can trust you. I am sorry. You can trust me. I'll take it seriously. It was just a stupid comment. And no lashing out at people when you get angry. None. None. You have my word. Be respectful of everyone. I will, I promise. Good. We've got a great future ahead of us. We just have to be smart, patient and careful. Now get some sleep. We need to keep a clear head. Ethan thought about sharing a prayer, but the plan had been created in the shadow of his ambition. He kept his hands apart. For one of the few times in their life when they were alone, they hugged. As Elijah left the room, Ethan gathered up his notes, put them in the drawer to the right, and locked it. He set his arms on the desk, nervously staring across the room at the closed door. He needed to be very careful. For the next 3 or 4 weeks, Ethan's neck would be stretched out and vulnerable to someone else's ambitious acts. Scene 6. Campaign dinner. Of the members on the council, Ethan Colin's church had the largest congregation, the largest, thus, the most votes. Amos Mathai's church was next, followed by Josiah Udah's. Ethan needed a third council member, not for the votes, but as subterfuge, a misdirection, although a transparent one, to dampen suspicions that the dinner was actually part of Ethan's presidential election campaign. The only question about Ethan Colin's prize dinner invitations was which random councilman's family would receive the third invitation. Benjamin Mabley was chosen specifically because his congregation was small. It was of no apparent benefit to Ethan's election. Unlike Mathai and Udah's, Mabley's congregation was too small to draw attention and could be used to deflect inquiries like, "Ethan, what are you up to?" The choice was an obvious deception, but it nonetheless eased Ethan's mind when challenged as to his intended aspiration for the presidency. He had an answer primed and ready. The dinner was scheduled for the second Saturday after President Bertrand's Tuesday death, which allowed 11 days of mourning, enough time to honor the grieving without seeming too ambitious. 3 council members' families were invited: Amos Mathai, his wife Ursula, his eldest son Ezekiel, his other son Franklin, and his daughter Mildred. The second family was Josiah Udah's, his wife Tricia, his eldest son Isaac, and his daughter Loretta. The third family was Alonzo Mabley, his wife Alice, his son Benjamin, his son Eldridge, and his daughter Felicia. Only missing from Ethan's family were Bethany and Naomi. As the evening wore down, so did the conversation. Amos filled the void. "Ethan, how are Bethany and Naomi doing at college? Do they like it?" "They're doing well and appear to be enjoying it immensely." "You must be proud of such beautiful, sweet girls." "Yes, I am. They're quite a pair. Not a bad bone in their body. Have always been wonderful. They're delightful. Everyone seems to love them." Ezekiel has had a crush on Bethany since the 10th grade. "Dad, don't. It's true." Embarrassed, Ezekiel closed his eyes and shook his head. Not to be excluded, Josiah chimed in. "I believe I've only met the girls once, but they appear to be lovely. Right, Isaac?" Isaac's charm was focused on Delilah, who was soaking up each fond expression and storing it safely so that it could become part of a future fantasy. Isaac turned at the sound of his name and curtly said, "Never met them. Don't know them." He returned to his attention to Delilah. Josiah leaned toward Ethan, turned his head and said, "Looks like Isaac has taken a shine to your daughter Delilah." "It does look that way," Ethan said with a broad smile. "Tricia, don't they go together well?" Josiah asked. As dinner wound down into dessert, Tricia had been engaged in conversations with Ursula and Esther. Gritting his teeth slightly, Amos reiterated, "Tricia, dear, what do you think?" "About what?" "Isaac and Delilah. They look good together. But don't embarrass them." Amos glared at her and returned to Ethan. The evening was only a few comments from being concluded. As intended, only Ethan, Elijah, Amos, Ezekiel, Josiah, and Isaac had been a consequence, and that had gone well. Ethan's family had avoided Bertrand's death and only engaged when pressed for a response which inevitably included a "God bless him." That faux pas had been avoided. After dinner, they retired to the spacious living room, the fathers and mothers in separate groups, and the sons and daughters clustered as far away from the adults as they could get and still remain in the living room. The other dinner guests had served their purpose, filling chairs with meaningless conversations, except for 2 unanticipated bonuses. Isaac had taken an interest in Delilah. If played right, that could mean another set of votes. Plus, Ethan had discovered that Ezekiel was enamored with Bethany. That could be exploited. When the family retired for the evening, Delilah was in the best mood she had been in years. She chattered about Isaac to her mother at the top of the stairs for several minutes before saying goodnight. If she had been 7 years old, she would have skipped to her room. As she wasn't, she had to be satisfied with smiling and humming. Ethan and Elijah stayed in the living room talking about random subjects before they went to Ethan's office for the important conversation. Ethan started. That went well. I didn't know Ezekiel felt so strongly about Bethany. The prospect of marriage between them could give us the votes we need. If you can get Bethany to agree. Ezekiel is not much of a prize and Bethany is very particular. She'll do what's needed. I don't know. She won't be given a choice. It will be arranged and she will accept it. They all do in the end. They all aren't Bethany. It might be the normal way of doing things, but Bethany has never been normal. She has an iron will. Then I will break her will. Good luck. I expect your help. I'll do what I can, but you know she doesn't like me. But she respects you. As I said, I'll do what I can. Ethan frowned. Now for the other unexpected thing. I didn't think Isaac would be interested in Delilah. That should play well for us. A marriage between those two would pull in another block of votes. Well, you won't have trouble convincing Delilah to marry him. Arranging a marriage with her has failed 4 times. Only once could we even get past the initial meeting. We can't even get most guys' parents to agree to go to a second meeting. She has a reputation for being belligerent and caustic. That doesn't attract suitors. But she didn't appear to be that way with Isaac. She had no frowns, only smiles. That's Isaac's talent. Isaac's handsome and smooth. He knows all the tricks when it comes to females. He sees himself as every woman's dream, and they often believe it. Watch out. He's the love them and leave them type. If he's interested in Delilah, he has an ulterior motive. I don't really care, as long as we can get them together long enough to secure the votes if we need them. What about Delilah? Just support her, and she'll recover. She's always admired you. Be a good big brother. She'll survive. She always has. I'll do what I can. Our next step is to meet with each privately. When? Next week. We'll meet the night before and gather some ideas. In their minds, the night ended with the campaign well in hand. Scene 7. Amos Mathai meeting. Ethan's invitation to Amos Mathai was for a Saturday afternoon meeting in his old church, the Evangelical Church of Lord's Bounty, which had become his private office and the Council of Evangelical Christian Churches meeting location. Ethan had driven himself in one of his older cars. The limo would have attracted attention to the clandestine meeting. Ethan greeted Amos with a smile and God bless you at the front of the church. On the way to Ethan's office, they followed the well-worn pattern and asked how families were doing. It was to serve as a breaker of the cool, thin ice that might hamper Ethan's success. Ethan avoided sitting behind his desk, which he felt would put a barrier between them. Instead, he led Amos to a sitting area and motioned for Amos to sit in a chair which was angled toward a chair in which Ethan sat. Amos, you have a fine son in Ezekiel. That's kind of you to say. I'd like him to meet Bethany sometime. He'd like that. Anyway, I've been thinking that we should combine some of the extracurricular activities between our churches. With a suspicious expression, Amos said, let's get to the real topic. What do you mean? I know why we're meeting. Ethan raised his best confused expression. Ethan, you want to be president of the council, and you need my votes. Amos, I really didn't. Just admit it. You're trying to find out if I'll commit my votes to you, or if I have decided to run for president myself. Chagrined, Ethan replied, okay, you're right. That all depends on what we can agree on. It would be hard to run against you. You have too many votes. I'd have to forge too many alliances, but if I form an alliance with you, you're in. That about sums it up. So, let's see what we can agree on. They discussed the important topic of what executive position he would hold on the council and the mundane topics of shared finances. Ethan balked at the contribution Amos wanted for the church and Ethan's support for Amos' church projects, for which he needed the council's approval. I'll see what my church's finances are, and we'll talk again. And there's one more thing, something personal that will be needed to cement the deal. And that would be what? Ezekiel's marriage to Bethany. Ethan did not expect that the marriage would be brought up so soon. Taken by surprise, Ethan's head jerked back. Marriage? To Bethany. Yes. Bethany has just started college. I know, but she's a woman. Her place is in the home raising children, working in the church. She doesn't need college. She needs a husband and a family. And if I can't do that, look somewhere else for the votes. It's that important? Ezekiel deserves this. The poor boy is crazy about her, and I want to see him happy. Ethan eyed him suspiciously. Plus, you want a permanent connection to my family. That too. I don't know if she'll want to do that. Don't you have control of your own daughter? Of course I do. Amos rose. Well, I'll be waiting for your reply. Before Ethan had a chance to recover, Amos was out of the office and out the side door with the door closing behind him. Ethan's mind blanked, then flooded with images of confronting Bethany. None of the scenarios which played were pleasant. On the contrary, they were battles of will. He knew that Bethany held the upper hand. She had to say I do. If she didn't, it wouldn't get done. He knew his professed control of Bethany had been bravado. She would fight back. He muttered, maybe once she meets him and knows the situation, she'll comply. Her mother did. It was a done deal before we met the first time. We had a month to get to know each other a little. If Bethany knows that, it's done. She'll comply. She has to accept her place. She has to do what is for the benefit of the family. Ethan gathered up his senses and drove home, still trying to convince himself that the headstrong Bethany would comply. He went through the front door and angled toward his office. Esther stepped into his path. So, how was your meeting with Amos Mathai? How did you know about that? Do you really think you can keep anything from me? I told Elijah not to tell anyone. Don't blame Elijah. He didn't tell me. Ursula Mathai called just before you walked through the door. She asked how the meeting went. So, how did it go? We need to talk. That's serious? Yes. They went into his office. He closed and locked the door. It's that serious. I'm afraid so. Ethan, you're scaring me. It's scaring me, too. We could lose the chance of being president. I knew Elijah was helping you to run for it. I knew you wanted it. You always have. I just wondered when you're going to tell me, so I can help. Well, I desperately need your help now. Tell me what you need. Not what. Who? Who? I need Bethany. We'll tell her she needs to come home for a while. We need her to stay. You'll be in for a battle. She's in college, and it was the culmination of her lifetime dream. She loves it there. She won't want to leave. Sometimes dreams don't come true. That's an awful thing to say. Don't you want her to be happy? She'll be happy, but just in a different way, for different reasons. What different way, and what reasons? A family, a husband, kids, the church. I don't know. Our marriage was arranged. We didn't even know each other. We had a month before the marriage. That turned out fine, didn't it? Casually, without conviction, she answered. It took a while, but certainly. You don't sound too convincing. It was fine. I'm very happy now. It just wasn't as easy as you think. It's probably harder for girls. Women just need to do what's expected. The important thing is, it worked. Yes, that's true. Anyway, who is her suitor? It's someone she already knows. That will help. Amos Mathai son Ezekiel. She flinched. Ezekiel. Oh, Ethan. She will not be happy. What? He's so, well, to put it as nicely as I can, unsophisticated. Unsophisticated. He's not very bright. He's dull company, extremely awkward, and very odd. He spends a lot of his time around children. It's like he's a typical awkward teen. That's not what I'm saying. Then let me just put it this way. She's going to marry him, period. This discussion is over. Then enjoy telling Bethany. She'll hate you for the rest of her life. If she does, she does. Knowing what Ethan was about to unleash and have to face, Esther smirked and walked away. That smirk settled in Ethan's mind. He knew Bethany was a formidable force. Her ethics were etched deeply in her being. If something violated them, she would fight relentlessly, and not since she was a child had she caved in. She could be beaten, but her mind and would never be conquered. Ultimately, he might be able to force her to marry Ezekiel, but many people would regret it, most of all Ezekiel. Thomas see what Josiah Eudas would want. Scene 8. Josiah Eudas meeting. Josiah's enthusiastic acceptance of Ethan's invitation to meet in his former church encouraged Ethan to believe that he would not have to face Bethany's disappointment and possibly wrath over losing her dream, a college education. Eudas strode into Ethan's office with a confident grin and piercing eyes. After the usual pleasantries, he followed the same pattern as he did with Amos. Josiah, I've been meaning to talk to you about combining some of the church youth activities. They need to have more contact with young people other than the ones they see every Sunday and in their own youth groups. So what do you think? That would be good for them. Maybe even attending each other's services to listen to a different pastor would be beneficial, like a kind of exchange program. That's a great idea. Josiah paused. But there's something else I want to talk about. The vacancy for presidency of the council. Ethan's eyes lit up. Great. We should start dealing with that right away. We don't have much time left to fill the position. That's right. I wanted to know if I can count on your votes. Startled, he exclaimed, You what? I plan to run for the presidency. I have commitments from several council members, and yours would easily guarantee me the position. Actually, I was going to make you the same offer. So, we have agreement. I think you have misunderstood. I was asking you to support me. Well, this is rather awkward, isn't it? Yes, Ethan replied sharply. I've talked to several council members since Bertrand passed, and... You mean you didn't observe a mourning period? No, we had the service, and for most, that was the end. Don't you think that was rather disrespectful? Why? We should honor his passing with a period of reverence. As I was saying, I've talked to several council members, and they fully endorse my candidacy. They feel that we need some fresh blood at the head of the council, and since you were basically Bertrand's surrogate, they decided it was time for a change in direction. Ethan could feel his anger rising. As his face flushed, he began the battle to gain calm. After several seconds of hostile silence, he gritted out, I can see we are not in agreement. I'm not going to argue about new direction or question whether you accurately have reflected the position of the other council members. But we'll see how this plays out. I hope there are no hard feelings. I feel you are a valuable member of the council, and I will look forward to your support. Ethan was about to let a comment roll off the end of his tongue. Who the hell do you think you are? But then he thought, what would people say about the petulant response? He stuffed the comment back down. Call Amos. Josiah stood, reached out his hand, and waited for Ethan to acknowledge the gesture. Ethan rose and did, tensely. Ethan was still sizzling when Josiah was out of sight. He sat behind his desk for 10 minutes, weighing his choices. He called Amos. Clinging to his pride, his fingers stuttered as he dialed. After brief hellos, Ethan said, I've thought about your offer, and I feel it would be of benefit to both of us and our families. What about Bethany? While unsure, he managed to say, she'll do as her family wishes. Whatever small objection she may have will be overcome, I'm sure. With Josiah's challenge fresh in Ethan's mind, he had been moved to the edge of panic. He would not quibble with any of Amos' demands. As Ethan heard the dial tone, Bethany's expected angry expression lurched at him. He felt the sting of her disappointment. Surely she would hate him. He wondered how deep it would go. Would it create an impassable barrier between them? He feared it would. Scene 9. Ethan's rival. Ethan was unsatisfied on the drive home. His plan had never been to give up so much, but his desires had outweighed other considerations. Once the presidency was within reach, he felt that it was already in his grasp, and he just couldn't let go. As is the nature of humans, he was able to reason past the ambitious desire. He denied his avarice, instead, reasoning that it was for the benefit of evangelical Christianity. He could accomplish what no one else could, expand. Thus, while he was uneasy, the price Bethany would have to pay was justified. When he walked into his office, Elijah was sitting at his father's desk. Ethan stopped at the doorway. Elijah's eyes were on him. Just seeing how it feels. I'm not dead yet, Elijah. Elijah quickly moved to a chair next to his father's desk. Ethan sat heavy. Dad, what happened? Something unavoidable. Does it hurt securing the presidency? It would have if I hadn't done something I didn't want to do. Stop dodging, just tell me. I was trying to avoid chaining Bethany to Ezekiel, so I tried to get Josiah Udah's votes. As we're talking about the need to elect a president, he suddenly says, I wanted to know if I can count on your votes. While we were holding back to honor Bertrand, he's been gathering votes. Indignantly, Ethan added, he has the audacity to ask me to support him. He's only been on the council for 2 years. He says we need new blood. The nerve of the guy. Like father, like son. What do you mean? Isaac is just like that. Pushy, arrogant, self-serving. He'd run over you on the sidewalk and sue you for getting blood on his bumper. Bad guy. Thinks he's better than anyone and should get what he wants when he wants it. And he'll do whatever he needs to get it. So, I had to agree to Mathai's demands. But you'll be president, right? He asked worriedly. Yeah, but I don't know what it will cost us down the line. Bethany to start with. And if you can't get her to say I do, we're in trouble. We have to get Bethany home right away. We'll have to tell her it's an emergency of some kind. Then we have to convince her to marry Ezekiel before the election. We get no votes from Mathai until the marriage is done. Maybe we should have Mom talk to her. Possibly even Naomi. She won't listen to me, and now, probably not you.